everybody. Welcome back. I'm still Hutch. My guest is still Pastor Chris Wiley. He's in the Pacific Northwest. Some of you who are watching this on YouTube via the video may be confused and think that he is the most interesting man in the world from the beer commercials of a previous time. He is not, although he is a very interesting man. And in that vein, we're going to ask him this follow-up question from our interview today. So, I loved reading Household and War for the Cosmos, and one of the things that was particularly enjoyable for me was your reliance on classical literature. And so one of the things that came out in that book was, your regular and repeated use of the imagery of pietas as it's found in the Aeneid. And so if you could put kind of two classical works of literature in the hands of every Christian man in the English-speaking world, let's say, what would you want to give them to read, and why those choices?
Well, the Aeneid is probably the place to begin. That would be my first choice. And I don't think you can understand the New Testament as well as you should if you don't have a sense of what the milieu, the sort of the cultural milieu was like within which the early church developed. So, if folks aren't aware, the Aeneid, Virgil's Aeneid, was commissioned by Augustus, and it was commissioned in order to renew pietas in the empire. So they were concerned. Many of the authorities in the empire were concerned with social decay. So it's nothing new.
Sure.
This concern, and what occurred, of course, prior to the rise of the emperors was a series of civil wars, which really threatened the fabric and stability of the Roman world. So
Right.
you have a transition from a republic to an empire. The pietas, household piety, was considered to be the glue of the republic. And with the rise of the emperor, or the emperors, that was called into question. And so,
Okay.
in order to renew household piety, Virgil was commissioned to write the Aeneid. Now, it's a marvelous recapitulation of the Odyssey, and there are a number of things that are going on that are, in parallel. But with regard to the actual story, it's a marvelous story, and it's a lot of it's quite I think captivating.
Yeah.
And so if you read that, I think it'll enrich your reading of the New Testament, because there are subtle things that are going on in the New Testament that allude to it. Let me give you an example. So I think it's in Acts, is it chapter 8, where a fellow named Aeneas is healed. I believe it's Peter. Anyway, he can't walk.
Right.
So Aeneas is healed, and he can now walk. Now, what's very subtle that about that particular episode becomes tremendously obvious when you remember the story of the Aeneid. So in the Aeneid, Aeneas has a father, Anchises, who is unable to walk, and Aeneas picks his father up. So it's a story about the fall of Troy, and Aeneas carries his father on his back out of the city of Troy as it's being destroyed by the Greeks.
Right.
So here we have in the New Testament, in the book of Acts, a fellow named Aeneas who can't walk. Now, everybody would know that this is sort of like a joke, or almost tongue-in-cheek. It'd be like saying, and there was a guy named George Washington, and Jesus went to George and said, "George, I'll help you cross the Delaware."
Right.
It's like just so obvious what's going on when you know the story, and everybody in the empire knew the story of Aeneas. This is not just like something that a few Roman folks over here. We have graffiti all over the archaeological digs, actually quoting quotes from the Aeneid, as graffiti. So this is something that's just like I don't know. It's like whatever the most popular film of the day, Star Wars or whatever. I mean, it's just that kind of
Sure.
cultural significance in that world. The other book I would recommend would be maybe well, I would say I'm going to cheat here. I'm going to say Aristotle and both the politics and the ethics, the Nicomachean Ethics.
Okay. So I will add a third book to Pastor Wiley's list. If you have sons at home, especially if you're homeschooling, you're doing classical Christian education, those sorts of things, I would highly recommend putting a copy of Plutarch's Lives in the
Oh, yeah.
hands of your son. Ralph Waldo Emerson referred to that as a Bible for heroes. That book has influenced more great men, I suspect, than maybe any other in history. And so read the Aeneid, do politics and Nicomachean Ethics, and also do Plutarch's Lives. So Pastor Wiley, can't thank you enough for joining me on the show. Before I let you go, you just moved to the Pacific Northwest. You just took a new call. So where are you at now, since you're not at Manchester PCA anymore? And tell my listeners how they can find you if they're ever in the Pacific Northwest.
Well, sure. I'm serving the church, the PCA church in Vancouver, Washington, which is right across the river, the Columbia River from Portland.
Okay.
I'm living in Battleground, which is a cool name to just
Yeah.
say, and I'm living in Battleground, Washington. But Battleground is sort of a town right next door to Vancouver, and
Okay.
so Vancouver, Washington, not Vancouver, British Columbia. So Vancouver, Washington is just right across there. So it's like a suburb of Portland,
Sure.
Portland, Oregon.
All right. Well, thank you again, Pastor Wiley, and I hope that your ministry there in Battleground doesn't turn into a battleground in the church, and that it's wildly successful, brother.
Well, thank you very much.